The Subcommittee on Indian and Insular Affairs will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess of the subcommittee at any time. The subcommittee is meeting today to hear testimony on the 5 bills before us. Under Committee Rule 4F, any oral opening statements at hearings are limited to the chairman and the ranking minority member. I therefore ask unanimous consent that all other members' opening statements be made part of the hearing record if they are submitted in accordance with Committee Rule 3.0. Without objection, so ordered. I ask unanimous consent that the gentleman from Alaska, Mr. Begich, the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Keating, the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Norman, and the gentleman from California, Mr. Obernolte, be allowed to sit and participate in today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. I will now recognize myself for an opening statement. Today, our subcommittee is meeting to discuss 5 bills. The first bill is H.R. 681 to amend the Long-Term Leasing Act to add the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe and the Wampanoag Tribe of Gayhead, sponsored by Representative Keating of Massachusetts. This bill would amend the Long-Term Leasing Act for these tribes to enter into leases of up to 99 years on trust lands, placing them on equal footing with many other tribes that already have this authority. Longer lease terms can unlock financing for housing, community facilities, as well as economic development. The second bill is H.R. 3654, the Tribal Emergency Response Resources Act, or TERRA Act, sponsored by Representative Randall of Washington. This bill would create a single tribe-driven framework at the Department of the Interior to integrate federal funding for climate resilience and, where needed, community relocation. This framework includes coordinated permitting guidelines and streamlined reporting. Proponents argue this improves speed and coherence for tribal projects. Considerations on the need for clear guardrails on waiver authority, legal durability under NEPA, and capacity to meet statutory timelines merit discussion related to this legislation, and I look forward to the start of those conversations here today. Our third bill is H.R. 3903, the Chugach Alaska Land Exchange Oil Spill Recovery Act, sponsored by Representative Begich of Alaska. After the Exxon Valdez spill in 1989, extensive conservation acquisitions created a split estate, with the federal government having a surface ownership while the Chugach Alaska Corporation had a subsurface ownership. This legislation authorizes a negotiated exchange to consolidate federal conservation where the federal government already owns the surface while conveying culturally and economically meaningful lands to the Chugach. The intent of the bill is to provide clear land management and to reduce the checkerboard estate. The fourth bill is H.R. 3925, Yuhaaviatam of the San Manuel Nation Land Exchange Act, sponsored by Representative Obernolte of California. This bill directs a mutual exchange of 1,400 acres of U.S. National Forest Service land for 1,400 acres of tribal land in the San Bernardino National Forest. The exchange would reduce checkerboarded land ownership and make it simpler to protect Arrowhead Springs, a culturally important place for the tribe. Our final bill is H.R. 4463 to amend the Catawba Indian Tribe of South Carolina Land Claim Settlement Act of 1993, which is sponsored by Representative Norman of South Carolina. The 1993 Act restored recognition of the Catawba and resolved claims, but it also imposed an unusual federal restriction on future tribal membership. It required both lineal descent from the base roll and continued political relations with the tribe in order for individuals to be considered for tribal membership. This is atypical. Generally, tribal membership is considered to be a decision reserved solely for the tribe itself, with little to no federal involvement. H.R. 4463 would remove that federal constraint and return authority for future citizenship to the tribe under its own laws while leaving the broader 1993 settlement framework intact. I want to thank our witnesses for being with us today, and I look forward to a productive discussion on these measures. The chair now recognizes the ranking minority member for any statement. Representative Ledger-Fernandez.
Thank you so much, Chairman Hurd. And as always, thank you to the tribal leaders and everybody in the audience and those watching us for joining us. I thank the administration witnesses. It's good to see you again. And it's good to be back after the August recess. In the month of August, I'm at with several tribal leaders. As you know, Santa Fe is home to the Indian market and to many other activities that bring us close with our tribal elders. And they shared certain things with me. They asked me to remember them and their members in the hearings, to remember them, especially in this moment where so much is in the news and there's so much chaos. They talked about the importance of respecting our natural resources. The land, air, and water are irreplaceable as long as we keep them clean and healthy. They told me how the land, air, and water, the fauna and the creatures on it hold our history, our songs, our hearts. The leaders shared the beauty integrated into the arts, the need to protect sacred sites and objects. They described the need for proper healthcare, education, and law enforcement. It was the basis of all the necessities that their tribes and their members need to move forward. Several months ago, this committee held a field hearing in Oklahoma City to honor the 50th anniversary of the Indian Self-Determination Education Assistance Act. Then the tribal leaders called on Congress to do much more to support self-governance and uphold our trust responsibility. And I think the hearing that we're having today does just that. Representative Randall's H.R. 3654, the TERRA Act, shows us the way. The TERRA Act would allow tribes to blend funding from multiple federal agencies for projects that improve disaster resiliency. When tribes prepare for fires, flooding, and disaster, they must pull funding from agencies across the federal government. But each agency has its own set of rules and burdensome reporting requirements, and how do you do NEPA? Let's streamline it. And thank you so very much, Representative Randall, for bringing this bill to our attention. The Santa Clara Pueblo governor, Governor Naranjo, wrote in a letter, open quote, "We must often spend years going from program to program, agency to agency, trying to string together resources. When we are successful, we must contend with burdensome reporting, competing administrative requirements, and inappropriate federal oversight. All the while, we burn through our own tribal resources with no promise that our efforts will ever be enough to address the devastating disaster we face. The TERRA Act would cut the red tape. It would make sure tribes can spend more time and more money on projects to defend against wildfires, flooding, and extreme weather events rather than reporting. It would give tribes greater control over the projects that affect their communities. They know the needs better than officials in Washington, D.C. But to support tribes, we must also support economic development and other initiatives to help them sustain their own communities. Representative Keating's H.R. 681 would allow the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe and the Wampanoag Tribe of Grayhead to lease their lands for up to 99 years. This is a concept that came out of bills we had when I was chair. It came out last year. It's a bipartisan idea. I am a co-sponsor of such a fix and hope that we will work to bring that legislative fix so that tribes don't have to come in one by one to get this leasing authority. We also have 2 land exchange bills on the agenda, and I love the land exchange bills because you are bringing back into your own jurisdiction the land that has historically been yours and that you need, both for the San Manuel Nation Land Exchange Act and in Alaska for the Chugach tribe as well, or region. And the last bill on the agenda is H.R. 4463, which removes the atypical restrictions in the Catawba tribe of South Carolina's Settlement Act, allowing a tribe to govern its own membership under their own constitution is simply consistent with Santa Clara v. Martinez, one of the seminal cases on what does it mean to have tribal self-governance. Membership is the essence of self-governance, and I am pleased that we are working to codify that in this legislation. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Ranking member yields. At this time, I would like to recognize Mr. Begich for 5 minutes to speak on his legislation Mr. Begich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. H.R. 3903 resolves a land ownership conflict in the Chugach region of Alaska that originated with the Exxon Valdez oil spill of 1989. In response, the Exxon Valdez Oil Spill Trustee Council was established and directed approximately $900 million in settlement funds toward environmental restoration and conservation, including the acquisition of more than 600,000 acres of surface estate for permanent protection. In the Chugach region, these acquisitions created a split estate problem. While the federal government acquired surface title for conservation purposes, Chugach Alaska Corporation, an Alaska Native Regional Corporation established under the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, or ANCSA, retained ownership of certain subsurface mineral estate beneath those federal surface lands. This bifurcation of title has precluded Chugach from exercising its property rights, restricted shareholder economic opportunities, and complicated federal land management by dividing surface and subsurface ownership. In 2019, Congress enacted the John D. Dingle Jr. Conservation Management and Recreation Act, which directed the Secretary of the Interior to study the Chugach split estate conflict and to identify federal land suitable for exchange. Pursuant to that directive, the Bureau of Land Management issued a 2022 report confirming that the split estate arrangement undermines both native self-determination and sound conservation management, and recommended legislative action. H.R. 3903 is the result of that negotiated resolution to the split estate arrangement, and I welcome Alaskan Sherry Beretta, Chairman of the Board of Directors for Chugach Alaska Corporation, here to speak later on this important legislation. And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields. At this time, the chair recognizes Ms. Randall from the state of Washington for 5 minutes to speak on her legislation. Ms. Randall.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And thank you for the subcommittee for making it possible for the Tribal Emergency Response Resources Act to have a hearing today. This is an exciting development for tribal communities in my district and beyond, and I'm grateful for your partnership, Mr. Chair, in advancing this bipartisan legislation. The TERRA Act is a critical step in ensuring tribal nations have the resources they need to prevent, respond to, and manage damage from climate change and extreme weather, natural disasters in their communities. My bill does this by, as you have heard, establishing an interagency framework under the Department of Interior for coordinating prevention, creating a single comprehensive plan to integrate federal resources to address tribes' environmental flexibility due to climate change, and initiating streamlining of statutory, regulatory, and administrative requirements to reduce burdens on tribal nations and promote self-determination. I introduced this bill alongside Representatives Gluesenkamp-Perez from Washington and Simpson from Idaho, at a critical juncture for tribal nations where the effects of extreme weather are only compounding. Natural disasters and big weather are increasing in frequency and severity across the U.S., and tribal nations are experiencing the needs for relocation and federal resources on their reserved land. As it stands now, tribal nations need to navigate through different agencies with varying requirements for each application, varying deadlines for spending the money, and when they need federal assistance to recover or prepare for extreme weather, it is increasingly cumbersome. As everyone here knows well, tribal nations have stewarded the lands we live on and the water we fish and travel and recreate in since time immemorial, and it's imperative that we uphold our end of the deal to them that we made by ensuring they have access to the resources they need to protect their communities. I visited the Hoh tribe in February, where I was able to see the tribe's relocation efforts, where rising sea levels are literally washing away homes and forcing families to move to higher ground. For tribes in my district like the Hoh, it's important that we remove red tape for tribal nations to attain federal funding. This is about upholding our treaty and trust responsibility and making government more efficient. I'm proud to sponsor this legislation and hear from our witnesses today, including Chairman Swanson from the Shoalwater Bay Indian Tribe, and I thank Director Mercier for his testimony in support of this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Gentleman yields. I will now recognize Mr. Obernolte from the state of California for 5 minutes to speak on his legislation. Mr. Obernolte.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Hurd. Ranking Member Ledger Fernandez. Let me just say, I missed this subcommittee. I missed this subcommittee. I wish I still served here, but thank you very much for letting me wave on and talk about a bill that's critically important to me and the district that I represent. It's H.R. 3925, the San Manuel Nation Land Exchange Act. And I'd also like to welcome Councilman Joseph Morongo, who serves as the cultural seat member of the San Manuel Nation. Welcome to Washington, D.C., sir. This bill is the culmination of a 10-year saga for the San Manuel Nation in my district. This tribe was established in 1983. They have been an integral part of the cultural life of my district. They have a reservation with some territory that they have acquired and they're trying to redevelop. And 10 years ago, they approached the National Forest Service with a proposal of a land swap. This is important because the reservation is completely surrounded by lands managed by the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management. And the area that they are trying to exchange for an equivalent amount of territory that they would then deed to the Forest Service is not just something that would connect these two sites, but also a sacred cultural site for the tribe. If you're familiar with the county of San Bernardino, the county seal is an arrowhead, and that arrowhead is a landslide scar that is on this cultural site. So it is something that makes perfect sense. The territory that the tribe is proposed to swap roughly equivalent amount of territory, about 1,500 acres, with the Forest Service. And the tribe has acquired this land over the years. And this is land that was selected by the Forest Service. It's not land that the tribe just decided to acquire. The Forest Service said, you know, these are the parcels we would like to have. The tribe went through all of the process and the due diligence, acquired the land, and now is looking to the Forest Service to do their part and consummate the deal. But unfortunately, it has been one round of red tape after another, and that's why this bill is necessary. This bill would cut through the red tape, consummate this land swap, which I think is in the best interest of not only the tribe, not only the Forest Service, but the members of my district, and it's something I think that would not only be a boon to the tribe in preserving a culturally significant asset, but also an asset to the community from an economic development standpoint. So I think this is a win-win-win if we were going to get this done. And that's why I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues on the committee to advance this legislation. So I respectfully ask for your support on this bill, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields. At this time, I would like to introduce the witnesses for our first panel. First is Mr. Brian Mercier, who's the Director of the Bureau of Indian Affairs at the Department of the Interior here in Washington, D.C. We also have with us Mr. John Crockett, Deputy Chief for State, Private, and Tribal Forestry with the United States Forest Service, the Department of Agriculture here in Washington as well. Let me remind our witnesses that under committee rules, they must limit their oral statements to 5 minutes, but their entire statement will appear in the hearing record. To begin your testimony, gentlemen, I think you might have done this before. You press the talk button to start on the microphone. We do use timing lights. Green means go. When you have 1 minute left, the light will turn yellow, and then once the light turns red after 5 minutes, I'd ask that you please complete your statement. I'll also allow all witnesses on the panel to testify before member questioning. And if you gentlemen are ready, Mr. Mercier, the chair will now recognize you for 5 minutes. Mr. Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Erd, Ranking Member Ledger-Fernandez, and members of the subcommittee, I am Brian Mercier. I'm an enrolled member of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde Community of Oregon, and I am the Director of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I would ask the subcommittee indulgence to wish my 14-year-old daughter, Kaloki Mercier, a happy birthday today back in Portland, Oregon. And I would also note my wonderful colleague, Murray Miller, shares that birthday today behind me. Appreciate the indulgence for the committee to wish my daughter a happy birthday. Thank you also for the opportunity to testify today on 4 bills that affect tribal nations: H.R. 681, H.R. 3654, H.R. 3925, and H.R. 4463. The Department's Bureau of Land Management has also provided a statement for the record supporting the intent of H.R. 3903, the Chugach Alaska Land Exchange and Oil Spill Recovery Act of 2025. And Mr. Chairman, I ask to submit BLM statement for the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Department of Interior also appreciates the subcommittee's continued leadership in advancing tribal sovereignty, land management, and community resilience. So the first bill, H.R. 681, would extend 99-year leasing authority to the Mashpee Wampanoag and Aquinnah Wampanoag tribes. This is a straightforward amendment to the Long-Term Leasing Act, which would provide parity with other tribes, empowering the long-term planning for housing, infrastructure, and economic development. The department supports this bill. To the second bill, H.R. 3654, the Tribal Emergency Response Resources Act, or TERRA Act, would streamline federal disaster and environmental funding into a single tribally driven plan. This mirrors the successful 477 Workforce Development Plan model, cutting red tape, honoring traditional ecological knowledge, and enabling faster, more effective responses to environmental threats and natural disasters. We support its intent and look forward to working with the subcommittee to ensure efficient and effective implementation. Next, H.R. 3925 would authorize a land exchange between the United States and the Manuel Nation. The department defers to the USDA regarding the dispositions of lands managed by the U.S. Forest Service and looks forward to working with the sponsor and subcommittee to finalize this exchange as needed. Finally, H.R. 4463 updates the Catawba Indian Nation's membership criteria by removing the, quote, political relations, end quote, requirement. The department supports H.R. 4463. So with that, I thank you for the opportunity and the invitation to appear today, and I am pleased to answer any of the subcommittee's questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mercier, for your testimony. The chair now recognizes Mr. Crockett for 5 minutes. Mr. Crockett.
Chairman Hurd, Ranking Member Ledger Fernandez, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I'm here to present the Department of Agriculture's views on two important bills, H.R. 3903, the Chugach, Alaska Land Change Oil Spill Recovery Act of 2025, and H.R. 3925, the Yuhaaviatam of San Manuel Nation Land Exchange Act. The Forest Service manages 193 million acres of national forest and grasslands. Many of these are in proximity to tribal lands. Our work with tribes spans forest management, wildfire mitigation, restoration, and cultural preservation. We recognize the deep cultural, historical, and ecological importance these lands involved in these bills. And we remain committed to collaboration with tribes and our federal partners. On H.R. 3903, the Chugach, Alaska Land Exchange, this legislation directs the exchange of 231,036 acres of subsurface estate to the Chugach, Alaska Corporation for 65,403 acres of federal lands owned by the including 63,414 acres of National Forest System acres. It also provides for the federal acquisition of approximately 100,000 acres of the Chugach, Alaska Corporation's subsurface estate underlying the Native Village corporations as well as state lands. The intent here is pretty straightforward: to reconcile the overlapping surface and subsurface ownership that has created jurisdictional challenges in the region. At the same time, the bill supports the continued prosperity of communities and fostering responsible stewardship in the region, a government obligation under the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, and USDA supports the intent of this bill. We look forward to working with the bill sponsors and the committees to ensure the exchange is consistent with the 2022 Chugach Region Study to address any issues of parcels that may have been identified outside of the study. On H.R. 3925, the Yuhaaviatam of San Manuel Nation Land Exchange Act. This bill authorizes the exchange of about 1,400 acres owned by the nation for roughly 1,400 acres of National Forest System lands. The bill exempts this exchange from the public exchange provisions of the Federal Land Management Policy Act. It requires an agreement with the Secretary of Agriculture to preserve the cultural and historical integrity of the Arrowhead landmark site. The Forest Service has administratively pursued a land exchange since 2022, including a formal agreement to initiate, followed by public consultation in 2023. The USDA generally supports this bill and would welcome the opportunity to work with the committee to address several important concerns. Specifically, we recommend clarifying survey and appraisal standards for both parcels as well as the mineral estate, and the respective roles of the USDA and the Department of Interior. We also suggest clarifying the financial responsibilities for any unforeseen or outstanding costs considering a project exemption from the requirements under the National Historic Preservation Act, as well as any additional requirements under the National Environmental Policy Act that have not already been completed. Taken together, these bills represent an opportunity to respect, preserve the cultural values, and support communities who depend on these lands. The Forest Service looks forward to working with the committee, the bill sponsors, tribal nations, and our federal partners to advance these exchanges in a way that is responsible and respectful for the tribes with interests at stake. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crockett, for that testimony. The chair will now recognize members for 5 minutes for questions. And I'm going to begin by recognizing Ms. Radawagan. Ms. Radawagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Ledger Fernandez, for holding this important hearing today. Thank you to the witnesses for your appearance. My question is for Mr. Mercier. Is the department aware of any opposition to H.R. 4463?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. We are not aware of any opposition.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. The gentlewoman yields. At this time, I would like to recognize the ranking member, Ms. Ledger Fernandez, for 5 minutes. Ms. Ledger Fernandez.
They were broken this morning. This is the second time here. Okay. So I want to go to Representative Randall's TERRA Act first because it really seeks to improve efficiency when planning for, and I think that's important, planning for and then responding to natural disasters. Director Mercier, how would streamlining reporting requirements as we proposed in the TERRA Act improve a tribe's ability to spend dollars efficiently?
Thank you for the question, Ranking Member Ledger Fernandez. Yeah, you know, in your opening statement, you referenced the multiple federal agencies that often will provide funding to a tribe's efforts in this space, and the various requirements, often multiple reporting requirements that could be required. So the intent of the bill to streamline that and have a single report meet the needs of various departments and bureaus is one we would be happy to work with the committee on seeing through and it being effectuated.
Thank you. And as we're looking at how we can streamline this, make it more efficient, this is also about disaster resilience. And would you agree that it's cheaper to spend money to prevent or guard against disaster rather than clean up afterwards?
Yes, Ranking Member, I think from our experience that is often the case.
Yeah, so when we invest in prevention, when we invest in planning, when we invest in data, so that when the worst happens, that's a good thing. You're agreeing with that, right?
Yes, Ranking Member, from our experience that preparing communities for natural disasters has been a good investment of time and money.
Well, I'm glad you agree with that proposition because I'm very disappointed in the fact that the BIA fiscal year 26 budget proposed to, and this is quote, eliminate wasteful programs related to climate change ideologies, including the Tribal Climate Resilience Program. So I've looked at that, close quote, I've looked at what's been funded under there because some tribes in my district and in everybody's district in Alaska and California, throughout the country, are receiving these funds. And it's helped provide critical funding to plan, to prepare for. And climate disasters are not ideologies. They take the form of floods and fire and drought. They're real and they have severe costs. So, Director Mercier, how do you want to explain to the tribes in my district or to Cochiti Pueblo, for example, which has one of these funds, how planning for that disaster is wasteful?
Ranking Member Ledger Fernandez, I wouldn't try to explain to the tribes in your district, or any tribe for that matter, that it was, that it's wasteful. But we have an obligation to ensure that every taxpayer dollar we receive is efficiently, effectively deployed. And I think that's what we've been doing this year with the existing funding from the Tribal Climate Resilience Program. And often the communities have worked with us to ensure that it's consistent with administration priorities, and we have been deploying those funds for public safety and similar purposes.
Right, the funds are going out there, and the projects look great. I mean, there's forest thinning, cultural fire introduction, water quality monitoring, a lot of data gathering. In Alaska, they want to look at the river flooding, sea coastal, how it does erosion. So those, when I read those, it's like, this is not ideology. But your budget says it's ideology. How is that ideology?
Yeah, Ranking Member Ledger Fernandez, I honestly don't see the budget saying that, to be honest.
I just read you the quote of why it was, I just read the quote. That is what the quote, why it was, open quote, eliminate wasteful programs related to climate change ideologies, close quote. Those are your administration's words.
Yes, Ranking Members, that may be the words in the budget about, in a broader sense, across multiple programs. In this particular Tribal Climate Resilience Program, we have been executing on projects that do prepare and protect communities from natural disasters. So that's why I'm having a hard time understanding.
It's the language, and I've run out of time. It is saying, I'm going to quote it again, because it sounds like you don't agree with it. It is, open quote, eliminate wasteful programs related to climate change ideologies, including the Tribal Climate Resilience Program, close quote, which is exactly what you just said. There's some good things happening. Hopefully, we will restore them, because I think Congress understands how important this is. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. At this point, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Wahlberg, for 5 minutes. Mr. Wahlberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Find which mic works here. Okay. Appreciate the panel being here as well. Mr. Crockett, thank you for being here today, and it's good to see you again. In your written testimony on H.R. 3925, you stated that you are working with the Bureau of Land Management on mineral valuation guidance and statement of work. What is the anticipated timeline for that statement of work and mineral valuation to be completed?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. It's our understanding that the tribe has also looked at a mineral appraisal for that land, and once that is done, it will be fed into our work with BLM, and then that will go into our broader process for the appraisal for the land exchange itself. So it's kind of a multi-part process that we're about halfway through on.
Halfway through it, okay.
Yes, sir.
H.R. 3903 would address the split estate arrangements that the federal government alongside the Chugach Alaska Corporation has dealt with for many years. In your written testimony, you noted that the USDA worked with both the Department of Interior and the Chugach Alaska Corporation to identify sufficient acres of land, and that the Forest Service supports the intention of the bill. In your opinion, would this transfer uphold our shared commitment to tribal sovereignty and conservation?
In my opinion, it would. That integrated work that you spoke of was a 2022 study that we did on the land exchange where parcels were identified, and we did have a role in identifying that. And so to answer your question, yes, we do support the intent of it.
Okay. How would addressing this split estate benefit all parties involved, including both the Alaska Native community and the federal government?
So addressing the split estate, at least on 100,000 acres of it that we would attain from the Chugach Alaska Corporation, that part would be remedied, and it would allow for the continued economic prosperity of those lands, as well as stakeholder opportunity for economic development on them. So addressing the split estate issue, this legislation would get us partway there on 100,000 acres for the split estate issue.
The bill, H.R. 3903, lists a one-year timeline for this exchange. Is that feasible?
That is a pretty aggressive timeline, and a lot to do within that time frame. Even if the legislation is passed, it would be hard for us to achieve the objectives within that 120-day timeline.
So operationally, it's not all that feasible.
It'll be hard to do.
Okay. Thank you, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. At this time, the chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. LaMalfa, for 5 minutes. Mr. LaMalfa.
Your travel and time with us here today. I'll just jump right into on the 3925 bill. The exchange, I chair the forestry subcommittee over on the ag side. So, Mr. Mercier, would you touch on this exchange? What would it open up? How would it help on the actual stewardship, the treatment of the lands there in that San Bernardino forest?
Thank you, Congressman and members of the committee. Our role at the BIA is fairly limited in this exchange, but I can speak more generally that consolidation of tribal lands has been beneficial for many tribes across the country, especially in wildfire preparation and kind of introducing land fire adapted landscapes and restoring those lands. So I defer to my colleague from the Forest Service to speak more to the details of this particular exchange, but at Interior, the Bureau of Land Management would have a role with any subsurface rights there as well.
Okay, so because frequently the checkerboard pattern of ownership is very problematic for access and running into the ability to manage on federal land versus a little more ability on the private land. So let me also on the Catawba bill by Mr. Norman. Now, I understand there's a membership requirement from a 1993 act that was been touched on. Do you think that in this bill will have a meaningful change to the service counts, the ability to do work, et cetera, for that tribe?
Thank you, Congressman. No, it would not have any effect on our relationship with the tribe. The department views this largely as an internal tribal matter, their inherent sovereignty to determine their citizenship. So this amendment to the act would provide kind of parity to other tribes in the country with that sovereign authority of determining its citizenship.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Crockett, would you care to touch on that previous question there on the enhanced stewardship in San Bernardino that the exchange would provide?
Yeah, sure. So it's my understanding as the land exchange goes, we'll get about equal value, about 1,400 acres of federal estate for that exchange. And had a conversation with both the forest supervisor of the San Bernardino National Forest yesterday, as well as the acting regional forester for the region. And they assured me that this land exchange was the highest priority land exchange on the San Bernardino. And so we recognize that after it goes through after everything is done, that it will provide economic benefits for the tribe as well.
Okay, and as well as better stewardship and lands that are less fire prone?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep, that's a big part. All right. You had raised concerns about clarifying financial responsibility for unforeseen costs. What would you drill down on that a little bit more? If the exchange, is there some unforeseen or outstanding costs that could happen? And why would that be that difficult in an exchange?
Well, I wouldn't describe it as a difficulty. I would describe it as something that would need to be clarified in the legislation. And so it's my understanding that if those costs are included or identified in the legislation, then it'd be up to the proponent to absorb those costs. But if they're not in the legislation, then the Forest Service would have to absorb any unforeseen costs that are associated with the land exchange.
So that's a typical concern for the Forest Service on other exchanges?
It's something that we have to I would say be aware of when we're going into it, and so we have to plan for the economic cost that's associated with it.
Are most of these types of exchanges usually the burden is borne by the Forest Service on these?
So I don't have the mix or the answer on the mix of our costs, but I do know it is something that as we look at people capacity concerns and financial capacity concern, it is a consideration for us, but I don't have our exact statistics.
Okay, quickly, what could you estimate the cost would be if whether it's Forest Service or borne by others? What's the cost of a land exchange, since really it's a paperwork exercise?
Yeah, I'd have to follow up and get you the specifics later. I don't have them off the top of my head.
A ballpark?
I don't even have a ballpark, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. The gentleman's time has expired. I understand, Ms. Hoyle, you do not have any questions, is that right? Okay. At this time, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Alaska, Mr. Begich, for 5 minutes. Mr. Begich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First question for Brian Mercier. One of the main issues this bill addresses for 3903 is the split estate model left over from the Exxon Valdez settlements. From your department's standpoint, how does resolving that split support tribal self-determination, and how does it streamline federal land oversight?
Thank you, Congressman. I would defer any questions on this bill to my colleagues at the Bureau of Lands Management and USDA. I'm not well equipped to address that, but happy to take anything back to the department.
Okay.
Your question.
Question then for Mr. Crockett. Thank you for your testimony. Your statement notes that this bill reconciles overlapping surface and subsurface ownership. Can you explain how aligning these estates through H.R. 3903 would enhance both conservation outcomes and land management certainty?
Yeah, so the biggest driver is the jurisdictional uncertainty with the split estate that's in place now. And this bill would help clarify that. And as I stated earlier, 100,000 acres of the 200,000 acres that are identified, we'd have good clarity on what that split estate would be. We don't, from the forest perspectives, we don't see any conservation barriers, if you will, on it, more so jurisdictional issues.
Thank you. And would you agree that this bill supports the intent of ANCSA by facilitating economic self-sufficiency for Alaska Native communities while also consolidating federal conservation lands?
I do.
Finally, and this is, because you're here, I've got you for a minute, could you provide a status update on the timber sales currently under review or in development in the Tongass National Forest, and what steps the Forest Service is taking to ensure those projects advance without unnecessary delay?
Yeah, so while I don't have the specifics on it, what I do know is that the forest and the region are working together on their plan for making sure that they have a reliable source of volume, or timber volume, for the industry that's there. But I'd have to follow up with you on the actual numbers as of now.
Okay, we appreciate that follow-up, and thank you again, and with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields. At this time, the chair recognizes himself for 5 minutes. Thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony. Mr. Mercier, I have a question about H.R. 3654, the TERRA Act. The animating principle, as I understand it, is to streamline access to federal resources for tribal nations and subsequent reporting and oversight requirements. Does the department have a view of this legislation? Is it viewed as an environmental carve-out for tribal nations, or how is this perceived within the department?
Yeah, I think the department is interested in working with the committee on the whole of the proposed legislation. I have reviewed the bill, and there is not a carve-out per se. There's some language around environmental review, streamlining it, et cetera, that we're very interested in working with the committee and staff on.
Does the Department of Interior anticipate any practical challenges in consolidating funds from multiple agencies with their own rules and timelines?
Yeah, we have some experience with the 477 Workforce Development Program, and it is very complicated, hence our request to work with the committee on this, because it is very complicated. You're often with more than a dozen different federal agencies and bureaus, which requires quite a bit of coordination.
HR 4463 strikes the requirement that future enrollment for the Catawba Nation must be tied to lineal descent and continual political relations, and returns those membership decisions to the tribe. Does the BIA support the principle that membership determinations should rest with individual Indian tribes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we do.
Just to clarify, neither the BIA nor any of its field offices are in the business of making determinations about who should be allowed to be members of an Indian tribe. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Crockett, regarding HR 3925, it's my understanding that the administration has begun evaluating this exchange administratively. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
What kind of timeline is anticipated?
So we started the process in 2022 and then did public notification in 2023. We expect that we're about halfway through the process now, but a lot more steps ahead of us.
How does that timeline match the typical timeline for land transfers?
Oh, boy. So typical timeline. So let me start with this. Land exchanges are complicated. And we have a 64-step process that we follow, kind of like a checklist when we're doing land exchanges. And for this process, we're about halfway through that. But there are a lot of challenges that are associated with our land exchanges, which is why we end up before you testifying on them legislatively. But we're about halfway through our administrative process on this one.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about the practical management problems that come with a split estate? Give us some examples of how that creates complications.
Yeah, so it's mostly around surface versus subsurface. And so if you own the surface rights, you get to do whatever you need to do on the surface. If you own the subsurface right, you have entitlement to be able to go in and do the work that's related to the subsurface, generally related to mining or drilling or something to that effect. And when you have a split estate, it further complicates it because one individual owns the surface, another individual owns the subsurface that's associated with it.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to yield the balance of my time back. At this time, it appears that we don't have any further questions for this panel. I want to thank the witnesses for their valuable testimony and also my colleagues for your questions. The members of the committee may have some additional questions for either or both of you, and we'd ask that you respond to those in writing. And at this time, I would ask the clerk to please reset the table for the witnesses for our second panel. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ranking member.
Actually, say happy birthday to the witnesses' daughter and staff.
What's your daughter's name, Mr. Mercier?
Kaloki, which means butterfly in Navajo. My wife is Navajo, and we call her Callie for short.
Well, happy birthday, Coyote.
Yes, happy birthday.
Thank you very
gentlemen.
much. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Witnesses for the second panel, welcome to the Subcommittee on Indian and Insular Affairs. I would like to begin by introducing each of you. The first is the Honorable Brian Harris, Chief of the Catawba Nation from Rock Hill, South Carolina. Welcome, Chief Harris. Next is the Honorable Cheryl Andrews Maltese, Chairwoman of the Wampanoag Tribe of Gay Head in Aquinnah, Massachusetts. Welcome. And the Chair would now like to recognize Mr. Begich from Alaska for 30 seconds to introduce the witness from his district. Mr. Begich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my pleasure to introduce Sherry Beretta, a distinguished Alaskan and Chairman of the Board of Directors for Chugach Alaska Corporation. Ms. Beretta is originally from the village of Tutitlik and has been a leading voice for Alaskan Native self-determination for decades. She has chaired Chugach since 1998, guiding the corporation's growth and its commitment to cultural preservation, economic development, and opportunity for its shareholders. In addition to her role at Chugach, she has served on the boards of the Alaska Federation of Natives, the University of Alaska Board of Regents, and the Chugach Heritage Foundation. She brings deep expertise, a collaborative spirit, and a long-term vision for the region. I'm proud to welcome her here today in support of H.R. 3903. Welcome, Sherry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Begich. Our next witness is the Honorable Quentin Swanson, Chairman of the Shoalwater Bay Indian Tribe from Tokeland, Washington. Welcome, Mr. Chairman. And our last witness on this second panel is Mr. Joe Morongo, Councilman of the Yuhaaviatam of San Manuel Nation in Highland, California. Welcome, Councilman Morongo. Let me remind our witnesses that under committee rules, you must limit your statements, your oral statements, to 5 minutes, but your entire statement will appear in the hearing record. As I mentioned before, to begin your testimony, press the talk button in front of you. Green means it's good to go. Yellow means you have 1 minute. And when the light turns red, it means your time has expired. And I ask you to please wrap up anything that you're saying. And I'm going to allow all witnesses on the panel to testify before member questioning. And with that, let's get into the testimony. And the chair now recognizes Chief Harris for 5 minutes. Chief Harris.
Thank you, Chairman Hurd, Ranking Member Fernandez, and the members of the subcommittee. On behalf of the Catawba Indian Nation and my people, I would like to thank you for holding this hearing and for considering House Resolution 4463, a bill to amend the Catawba Indian Tribe of South Carolina Land Claim Settlement Act of 1993. We deeply appreciate Congressman Norman's leadership in introducing this important bill. The Catawba Nation is a federally recognized tribe headquartered near Rock Hill, South Carolina, and we're also federally recognized in North Carolina. Terminated by the federal government in 1959 and restored in 1993, the nation today comprises approximately 4,256 citizens, of whom 2,859 are of voting age. The United States currently holds 1,053 acres of land in trust for the benefit of the tribe and our government. Governance is conducted through the General Council, which includes all adult citizens, as stated before, and serves as the nation's legislative body. Day-to-day operations are managed by the 5 members of the Executive Committee, which I serve on, elected by the General Council to carry out executive responsibilities and implement tribal policies and programs. So what this bill does, this bill strikes a portion of a single sentence from Section 7D of the Catawba Nation Indian Tribe South Carolina Lands Claim Act of 1993, otherwise known as Public Law 103-116. That clause currently prevents the tribe from enrolling any member, new citizen, unless that person is a lineal descendant of an individual on the 1962 final roll and has maintained continued political relations with the tribe. Good luck with defining that in Indian country. If enacted, this bill would restore to the tribe the authority to determine its own citizenship criteria as outlined in the Constitution, a right that is fundamental to tribal sovereignty, as Ranking Member Hennis stated when we opened up. When Congress enacted the Settlement Agreement in 1993, it was to resolve the tribe's long-standing Land Claims Act with the state of South Carolina and provide for a monetary settlement. The federal eligibility standard included in Section 7D was designed to help the Bureau of Indian Affairs and other federal agencies identify individuals who were entitled to share in that distribution at that particular time in our history. In our view, it was not intended to permanently limit the tribe's authority to define its political community. It was just a tool that was used. Those monetary distributions were completed decades ago. The federal enrollment restriction has long since outlived its original purpose and now serves only to constrain the tribe's ability to manage its own citizenship. In addition, the clause imposes a vague standard, continued political relations. That is legally undefined and administratively difficult to apply. Tribal staff must interpret whether an applicant has demonstrated sufficient political connection to the tribe, which could create confusion, as it does. We understand that some of this may be concerned about whether this bill would open the door to unchecked enrollment expansion. Well, we want to be clear, it will not. The tribe's own constitution remains in full force, as it should, and will continue to govern citizenship. Under the Constitution, all applicants must prove lineal descent from individuals listed on either the 1943 or the 1962 tribal rolls. And each applicant is verified through our DNA testing process and supporting documentation. These requirements are strict and are rigorously enforced. I deal with them every week. Moreover, over the past 5 years, the tribe has admitted approximately 200 new citizens per year. Denials based on federal clause have been rare. However, most rejections result from a lack of documentary evidence or DNA results disproving claim parentage. In short, this bill is unlikely to meaningfully alter the number of individuals enrolled each year, but it's a principle, as stated earlier, of Indian self-determination and self-doctrine. Congress has long recognized that this right to determine membership lies at the heart of its tribal sovereignty, as it should. This bill simply removes an outdated federal restriction that no longer serves a purpose and reaffirms that principle of self-determination as in Indian country doctrine. I would be remiss without saying the Catawba Nation looks forward to working with the future Congress to modernize additional provisions of the 1997 Act that include and continue to restrict the nation's sovereign authority. While the Act provided a framework of settlement, it also included unusual and outdated limitations that do not align with the principles of tribal self-determination that Congress has recognized and this committee has for other federally recognized tribes. In particular, the nation seeks to revisit elements of the Settlement Act that unnecessarily constrain its ability to exercise full self-determination, including restrictive land and trust deadlines, arbitrary acreage caps, geographic limitations on reservation expansion, 99-year restrictions on rights and exemptions, inequitable tax obligations, and the exclusion from the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act. And so with that, Subcommittee, we wish to thank you for your time and attention to this matter, and we urge your support, and I would be pleased to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you very much, Chief Harris, for your testimony. The chair now recognizes Chairwoman Andrews Maltese for 5 minutes. Chairwoman Andrews Maltese.
Good afternoon, Chairman Hurd, Ranking Member Ledger Fernandez, and the distinguished members of the subcommittee. My name is Cheryl Andrews Maltese, and I serve as the chairwoman of the Wampanoag Tribe of Gay Head, Aquinnah. On behalf of my people, I would like to thank you for holding this hearing on H.R. 681. And we can refer to us as the Aquinnah Wampanoag just to make things simple because it's a long name. I also bring warm greetings from Chairman Brian Whedon of the Mashpee Wampanoag, our sister tribe. While he is unable to be here today, given the importance of this bill, he did ask me to share his full support of the bill and also his gratitude to the committee for having this hearing. And we'd like to extend a special thank you to Congressman Keating for introducing this important legislation for his consistent support of both of our tribes. The Aquinnah and Mashpee Wampanoag tribes stand united in urging the passage of this bill. We are the successors to the great Wampanoag nation, the people of the first light. For thousands of years, we lived along the shores of what is now New England and are the first to see the sunrise over the Atlantic Ocean. Our ancestors sustained themselves through these lands and waters and built one of the earliest alliances with the English settlers as documented in the 1621 Treaty of Peace, over 400 years ago. In 1970, my tribe began the long process of seeking federal recognition, which we achieved in April 1987. At the same time, we pursued land claims underneath the Indian Non-Intercourse Act of 1790. That work led to the Massachusetts Indian Lands Claims Settlement Act, which restored a small portion of our ancestral homelands on Nopi, now known as Martha's Vineyard. Soon after, we became the first self-governance tribe in the Eastern region, demonstrating our ability to manage our own programs and make decisions for the betterment of our people, the true definition of local control. But today, the outdated restrictions of the Long-Term Leasing Act limit our ability to plan for our future on the lands we fought so hard for decades to restore. The law caps our leases at 25 years and requires secretarial approval. However, since 1955, Section 415 of the Act has been amended nearly 50 times to give almost 60 other tribes the authority to lease for up to 99 years. By including both the Mashpee and Aquinnah Wampanoag among them, simply ensures that we are treated equally and fairly. Why does this matter? Because lenders, investors, partners require long-term certainty. 99-year leases make it possible for us to attract investments, develop infrastructure, create housing opportunities, and support services like healthcare, education, and cultural preservation. For us, economic development is not about profit. It's about survival, opportunity, sustainability, and self-sufficiency. This need is especially urgent for us on Nope. Martha's Vineyard is one of the most expensive housing markets in the country. Wealthy second home buyers, and since COVID, more year-round residents have driven up the prices to the point where our own tribal members struggle to live in our own homeland. Long-term leasing authority is essential to create housing and community facilities while protecting our trust lands for future generations. The bill also aligns with the broader federal policy of self-determination embodied in the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act and the Hearth Act. And it reflects the principles that Congress affirmed in 1994 that all tribes, whether recognized in 1934 or later, are entitled to equal treatment under federal law. We fully support and applaud Congress's effort to ensure that all tribes are treated equally under this act. As the people of the First Light who helped establish the first permanent settlement of this country, it's only fitting that the Aquinnah Wampanoag and Mashpee Wampanoag should not be the last to access this critical tool for economic development, self-sufficiency, and self-government. On behalf of both our tribes, I respectfully urge you to move H.R. 681 forward, and I thank you for this opportunity, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chairwoman Andrews Maltese, for your testimony. The chair now recognizes Ms. Beretta for 5 minutes. Ms. Beretta.
Thank you, Chairman Hurd and Representative Ledger-Fernandez, members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Sherry Beretta, and I'm the chairman of the board for Chugach Alaska Corporation, established under the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, known as ANCSA, in 1971. I have spent the last 3 decades fighting for legislation that would restore land promised but not delivered to our people. I want to express our sincere appreciation to Congressman Nick Begich and the entire Alaska delegation for reintroducing H.R. 3903. I am grateful for the opportunity to testify today in strong support of it. This bill not only honors the intent of the 2019 Dingle Act, but also represents a step towards justice. It would authorize the balanced exchange of lands, providing roughly 65,000 acres of culturally and economically significant lands to Chugach, while transferring over 230,000 acres of subsurface estate to the federal government. This will consolidate ownership and resolve decades of management conflict. The legislation addresses a painful history. When Congress passed ANCSA over 50 years ago, we accepted a fraction of our traditional lands under the promise that they would be accessible and usable as a foundation for self-determination and economic development. Instead, we were granted mountaintops and glaciers, surrounded by and encumbered by federal lands. The promise was broken. But through the 1982 Chugach Settlement Agreement, and again through the long pursuit of justice after the 1989 Exxon Valdez oil spill, EVOS, Chugach continues to believe in a government that would one day make good on its word. The oil spill devastated our spirit, our ecosystems, our economy, and our way of life. Yet, rather than supporting the healing and recovery of our communities, federal and state agencies used EVOS funds to buy up native lands for conservation, eroding trust and creating fractured land ownership. Please let me share a short story about Walter McGannick Sr., a Chugach founder and past chief of Port Graham Village. He wrote a speech called "Coping with the Time When the Water Died," given at the oil spill mayors meeting in Valdez, where he said, "The land and the water are our sources of life. The water is sacred." He went on to say, "I will not lose hope, and I will help my people. We will learn from the past, we will learn from each other, and we will live." This profound statement underscores the deep connection our people have with our lands. It gives us hope for justice and the importance of fighting for this legislation. Here's an analogy. Imagine someone buys the front door of your house, but leaves you with everything behind it, and then tries to tell you how to use your home. That's the situation that we're in. Chugach still holds the legal authority to access and manage our subsurface estate, but the surface lands, which were once fully owned by our villages, are now locked away. This legislation would fix that. It would give the government ownership of the house and give Chugach a new unified parcel of land. Each parcel in this exchange has been carefully selected for economic and cultural value. Some parcels are adjacent to our Nuchik Youth and Elder Spirit Camp, a place of cultural education and healing. Other parcels offer economic development potential for tourism, transportation, forestry, and minerals to create benefits for our people. Our land is not for sale. It is our identity, legacy, and power. And it's time to return that power to the people who have lived in harmony with it for thousands of years. With the vast acreage the federal government owns in Alaska, moving this land exchange forward is good land management for the nation. It's a win-win. Chugach will work with Congress, agencies, and stakeholders to get this done. Our commitment is strong, and we are determined. We ask this committee to move forward with H.R. 3903 to resolve this conflict while creating opportunities for economic development. Please don't pass this problem on to future generations. In closing, I sincerely thank Representative Begich for your leadership on this land exchange bill. We are truly grateful for your support. I have hope. Thank you for your time, your service, and your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Beretta, for your testimony. The chair now recognizes Chairman Swanson for 5 minutes. Chairman Swanson.
Good afternoon, Chairman Hurd, Ranking Member Ledger-Fernandez, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on the Tribal Emergency Response Resources Act, aka TERRA Act. My name is Quentin Swanson. I serve as the chairman for the Shoalwater Bay Indian Tribe, whose homelands rest along Washington State's Pacific coast, on the north shore of Willapa Bay. The federal government carries both a trust and treaty responsibility to protect our lands, waters, and lifeways of tribal nations. It's in that spirit, our government-to-government partnership, that I sit here before you today. Indian country is experiencing intensifying natural disasters, fires, floods, storms, permafrost, coastline erosion that are reshaping our communities. Yet there is still no comprehensive federal program designed to help tribes prepare for, respond to, and recover from these threats. The bipartisan TERRA Act offers a path forward, and we urge swift action to see it enacted in the 119th Congress. Our tribe's reservation sits at sea level. A single tsunami could erase our entire community in minutes, our homes, our tribal center, our businesses, the very place that defines us as Shoalwater people. On top of that, relentless coastal erosion is devouring our land at a rate of about 100 feet per year. We've already lost nearly 2 miles of shoreline. We don't have the luxury of waiting. We must move our people uphill to survive. A few years ago, we secured land for relocation, but it was raw land. No roads, no utilities, no cleared space for homes, schools, or clinics. Every step forward requires enormous resources. And while federal support exists on paper, in practice, it's scattered across many different agencies with competing rules and timelines. As part of its trust and treaty responsibility to protect our lands and our people, the federal government is obligated to support these efforts. But layers of red tape make programs difficult to navigate and implement. We have been fortunate to obtain resources from DOT, HUD, and other federal agencies, but it can be difficult to access or use these resources when multiple agencies and award restrictions are involved. In 2023, for example, we were awarded road funding through DOT and housing funds through HUD. Naturally, the road must come before the homes, yet HUD released its dollars right away, while DOT's money lagged. That left us stuck, holding funds that we couldn't use, watching costs rise with inflation, all while the ocean crept closer to our reservation. These are not just bureaucratic delays. Every day of red tape increases the chance that a tsunami or storm surge could claim everything that we've worked so hard to preserve. Federal resources will be essential to ensuring this does not happen, but they need to work efficiently. Fortunately, the TERRA Act presents a solution for the difficulties that we face. With the TERRA Act, tribes facing natural disasters would be able to go to a one-stop shop in the Department of the Interior to identify existing resources throughout the federal government and integrate them into comprehensive plans tailored to their unique community's needs. Based on the highly successful 477 program, this bill cuts through red tape by minimizing reporting requirements, eliminating redundancies, streamlining environmental reviews, and improving government efficiency so tribes can effectively implement life-saving projects. Because the TERRA Act simply maximizes existing federal resources, there are no new appropriations attached to the bill. Shoalwater's experience working with HUD and DOT provides a powerful example of why the TERRA Act is so needed. If we had a TERRA plan, the money we needed to build the road and houses would have been consolidated into a single funding source that operated on one cohesive timeline. The time we wasted waiting for DOT would have been spent making real progress on our upland relocation project, and we would have saved money on inflation-related cost. For Shoalwater, the TERRA Act helps us. It helps us to meet the urgency of the moment in moving our community uphill. But the bill would also address threats faced by tribes all over the country, including wildfires, hurricanes, droughts, floods, permafrost, and tornadoes. I urge the members of the subcommittee to support the TERRA Act by co-sponsoring the bill, supporting efforts to move it forward, and seeing it through to full passage during the 119th Congress. There is no time to waste. Thank you for your time and for your attention. I'm available to answer any questions. Our full story is available in our written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Swanson, for your testimony. The chair now recognizes Councilman Morongo for 5 minutes. Councilman Morongo.
Thank you, Chairman Hurd, Ranking Member Ledger-Fernandez, and members of the committee for hearing this H.R. The Yuhaaviatam of Samoa Nation Land Exchange Act. As I will describe in more detail, the Yuhaaviatam of Samoa Nation has been working on this land exchange in good faith since 2017. We were trying to accomplish this through the federal administrative process, but we have now come to Congress for assistance because the federal administration process has failed to allow the exchange to go through within a timely process. On behalf of the nation, I thank Representative Jay Obernolte for introducing this legislation, and I thank the committee for holding this hearing. The Yuhaaviatam of Samoa Nation is a federally recognized tribal government. Our initial reservation was established by presidential executive order in 1891 and comprised of 640 acres along the steep foothills of the San Bernardino Mountains. This amount of land was a tiny fraction of our ancestral territory, which included a large portion of the western San Bernardino County, eastern Los Angeles County, and a small portion of southeastern Kern County. Acquiring land is difficult for us because the San Bernardino National Forest abuts our reservation on one side, where the cities of Highland and San Bernardino abut our reservation to the other. The proposed land exchange involves 1,475 acres of National Forest System land for 1,460 acres of non-federal lands owned by the Samoa Nation, all of which are located within the boundary of the San Bernardino National Forest. Our purpose was to acquire 2 parcels of sacred land from the National Forest that are adjacent to our reservation and our largest tract of feed land called the Arrowhead Springs property. The first forest parcel is of significant cultural and historic importance to the Yuhaaviatam. This parcel of land contains the arrowhead-shaped formation etched into the foothills of the San Bernardino Mountains. Measuring roughly 1,375 feet long and 449 feet wide, this arrowhead feature is believed to be of natural formation and points directly downward to an ancestral village of ours called Aquinnah, or contemporarily called the Arrowhead Springs property. This ancestral village space of ours holds healing waters in hot springs and was the place of refuge for our people when we were forcibly removed from the San Bernardino Mountains. This space is found in our stories and has associations with our Creator. The arrowhead, resting on the hillside above the village, is used in our nation's seal and is located about 2 miles away from our reservation. Designated as California Historic Monument 977, the nation proposes to record a covenant protecting the arrowhead on the transfer of the parcel. The second forest parcel connects our existing reservation with the Arrowhead Springs property, allowing us to have one main contiguous land base and the availability to streamline our wildfire and mitigation and prevention efforts. The nation has constructed a total of 3 fire stations on our lands. One of these stations is on the Arrowhead Springs property and provides firefighting personnel and equipment needed in that region. In 2017, the nation reached out to the San Bernardino National Forest leadership to discuss exchanging land owned by the nation for the parcels managed by the forest. Assured that the administrative process could be concluded in a timely fashion, the nation worked with the forest on a proposal for them to review and then submitted the formal proposal to the forest in March of 2019. By August of 2019, new leadership in the forest informed the nation that the lands provided by the nation were no longer desirable. So, by the direction of the forest, we engaged private sellers over the next 2 years and spent more than $4 million to secure lands desirable by the forest and submitted a supplement to our land exchange proposal in August of 2021. Forest leadership approved the proposal, and we agreed to initiate the land exchange, scheduling the exchange to be completed by August of 2023. By August of 2023, there was again new leadership within the forest and no clear timeline for when the exchange would be completed. While continuing to meet with the Forest Service, we went to our Congressman Jay Obernolte in October of 2023, seeking assistance in obtaining some level of clarity for the Forest Service about the outstanding items that needed to be completed. The Forest Service indicated that they planned to finalize the remaining reports by the end of spring 2024, but it took until 2025 to approve the cultural reports that determined the effect of cultural resources for an exchange in which the purpose was to protect the cultural resources. After investing 7 years into working with the forest through the administrative process, yet having no clear time frame for completing this land exchange, we asked our Congressman Jay Obernolte to introduce legislation that would help complete the land exchange within 120 days. It is our hope that we can continue to work on the land exchange with the administrative process while we continue to work with Congress to get this bill passed. We recently met with newly appointed Chief of the Forest Service, Mr. Tom Schultz, and we have affirmed our commitment to working through the land exchange through the administrative process. We look forward to working with Tom as well, and as with Congress on the land exchange, to see that this exchange is finished and that these ancestral lands are returned back to our nation's stewardship. We thank you for holding this hearing, and we thank you for considering this legislation.
Thank you, Councilman Morago, for your testimony. The chair will now recognize members for 5 minutes for questions, and I will begin by recognizing the gentleman from California, Mr. LaMalfa, for 5 minutes. Mr. LaMalfa.
Thank you. Working with the Forest Service on that, and so you seem to be, I guess, feeling fairly optimistic right now about an administrative exchange at this point. Is that a fair assessment that you're optimistic now, or?
That is a fair assessment, yes. After speaking with Mr. Tom Schultz, we're on a good line of work here.
Now, it sounded like you originally had an agreement on a piece of land you could swap, then all of a sudden it was unacceptable property to the Forest Service. What do you think changed on that?
I couldn't tell you exactly. There was I believe it was a 60-acre parcel of land that was no longer desirable by them.
What do they need to be desirable for? What do they need? You know, the tribe has particular needs of the land. You know, consolidating checkerboard's always a good idea. We got it all over the place where it makes access and mobility more difficult, but the tribe had specific reasons why it wanted certain pieces of land along with that accessibility and things. But what does the Forest Service care which piece of land they have, since they have so much? They have 193 million acres across the country.
I really couldn't tell you the answer to that. I feel like that might be a better question for the Forest Service.
Yeah, I just wondered what you'd heard.
Yeah.
So you're almost there, then boom, change their mind.
On a number of times, it's felt like that's been the case, yes.
Not a good track record. So you had to acquire different property that you didn't already own in order to make that acceptable as an exchange.
That's correct.
And what was the expense on acquiring that land?
more than $4 million in acquiring properties, and at this point, more than $5 million in total costs.
And this is for an equal to equal amount of land exchange, 1,400 plus acres in both cases.
That's correct.
All right. I'm sorry you've had to go through that, and I appreciate my good colleague, Mr. Obernolte, working to help you achieve this on there, and it shouldn't take that long. It shouldn't have to be that hard. I'm a true fan of much more of these exchanges around the country here, to whether we're talking checkerboard pattern or the people, our clients, the citizens of the U.S., come to us with a particular need of a piece of land, whereas I'm still mystified, what does the Forest Service care which land they own to make you guys, make your group go through this process of having to go out and acquire a different piece of land just for this swap. It's unbelievable. I guess we need to ask them about that, but I don't know if we'd be shooting at the same target here, because it seems to be happening in a different administration. So, well, hopefully, I'll be, of course, right there beside Mr. Obernolte on supporting the bill, and I hope it goes much more smoothly here. And if the administration process even goes simpler than moving a bill, because, you know, even though that's our job around here to legislate, it ain't easy to move bills around here and all that. So we will, you know, be encouraging Mr. Schultz on that. So count on this committee and this panel to be supportive going forward, okay? So, okay, hang in there.
Thank you, Mr. LaMalfa.
Okay. Chief Harris, on our 4463 here, that's Mr. Norman's bill. Now, let me get my feet out of me again real quick. Sorry about this. Okay, so if 4463 is enacted on, it would you enter into play, the tribe's constitution would govern future decisions on enrollments. Tell me a little bit more on what that flexibility would be, or what that means for the tribe on its enrollment. I know enrollment can be a very difficult thing for many tribes all over the country. Just, I'll give you a little time to emphasize that, please.
Okay, so, all right. Now, can you, is that on? Is that on? On? There you go. There it is. All right, so to answer your question, the Catawba Nation takes our tribal enrollment very seriously. And in our Constitution that predates the 1993 settlement agreement, it was ratified by the BIA and the federal government in 1979, and we have direct lineal descendancy in that. You have to be a direct lineal descendant from the 1943 and 1962 rolls, and then any new member has to be like a child, has to be delivered by or a product of a tribal member that is already on the roll and is of Indian blood. And so what this bill does, and with the, you know, in cahoots with the, or in reverence with this committee, it absolutely removes inadequate language that has no relevance or effect on our tribe at all.
Say that last part. I didn't quite hear the last part. And I
It
appreciate your indulgence,
removes,
Mr. Chairman. I know we ran out of time because of the sound system, but what's that?
It removes inadequate language from the federal government that doesn't belong or needs to be attached to our tribe.
Yeah.
Because our Constitution clearly states the way we enroll our tribal population.
Okay, all right, good. So it gets you where you need to go, bottom line. So it gets you where you need to go with your enrollment process.
Yes, sir. It puts us right in line with the rest of the 574 federally recognized tribes.
Excellent. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. Are you back? Yes.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the ranking member from the state of New Mexico, Ms. Ledger Fernandez, for 5 minutes. Ms. Ledger Fernandez.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Swanson, I need to tell you that your testimony describing the encroachment of the ocean on your tribal lands and how you literally are watching the destruction on an annual basis, and how you can see that federal inaction results in a loss of land. You are watching this. And so I think that that just sort of highlights the necessity that we must act quickly to help you out, right? And it sounds reasonable, right? You're not asking us to eliminate any of these federal programs, but rather to allow a consolidation of them so there would be one agency in charge. Is that an easy way of saying it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there might be some, and I've read some reports that said, well, maybe we shouldn't do this, because why should we do this when we still have, for everybody else, burdensome permitting and reporting requirements, right? If we're not going to fix NEPA for everybody, why would we do it here? But you're not asking us to eliminate NEPA or to eliminate any of the requirements. You're asking us to have one agency in charge who can then administer and streamline the different reporting requirements and have some waivers, just so that when there's two different agencies, you can have one that governs rather than having to do multiple. Is that a way of describing it?
Yes, Ranking Member Ledger Fernandez, that's accurate.
Yeah, and so tell us in your own words, why shouldn't we wait? Why shouldn't we wait until we fix everything? Why shouldn't we just wait until we fix everything?
Well, I'm not prepared to speak on a broader sense, but as far as my tribe's situation, as you alluded to, we're actually watching our land disappear. My parents tell me stories about this entire city that used to be out what we now call Washaway Beach, because now it's just a beach and there's no city left. There was a lighthouse, there was over 50 homes, a farm, a school that have all been lost to the ocean, and the Department of Ecology has been monitoring the rates of erosion since 1881, and since then we've lost about 2.7 miles of land, so it's pretty considerable.
Thank you, and I think the idea of being more efficient would make sense to do this here, and then we can think about whether it makes sense to do it other places, but we shouldn't stop ourselves because something else somewhere else hasn't been done, as I've read in some of the reports about this bill. Chairwoman Andrews-Maltais, the people of the First Light, what a beautiful description of your tribe. Can you describe to us how long you have had to, how much resources and how long it's taken you to come before a committee to just get 99-year lease authority, which many other tribes already have? How long have you been fighting for something other tribes already have?
For our tribe in particular, since 1987, when we got federal recognition, we've had challenges with trying to be on equal footing with all other tribes, which is why the 1994 amendment to the IRA was so important to us. And in this situation, when we're talking about the 99-year leases, we recently had we tried to get the Bureau of Indian Affairs to approve a lease between us and our housing authority. So some of our tribal members that are in the mutual help program would be able to get a HUD 184 or a VA loan. And that took over a year for them to approve it. And while that year transpired, not only did circumstances change, one of the people that we were looking to do this for also wound up by losing the opportunity because of the timetable. And we're still waiting on some clarifications on some other aspects.
Thank you, and I think this is an example of how all tribes should be treated equally. We should do a fix that applies to all tribes, so we won't be having to come in on a one-by-one basis. And, I think each of you, I'm going to run out of time, but it seems to me that for the Catawba, for each of the other witnesses, if we take this action, so we are actually correcting an injustice. Would you agree with that, Chairman? I'm sorry, I'm going to go. I've run out of time. So do you all agree that what the specific bills you have provided to us are basically creating an injustice that we did, right?
Absolutely.
I would agree.
Yes.
We're just going to try to fix it now. And I do want to apologize. I actually have to go to memorial service and speak for Fred Harris, Senator Fred Harris, who all of you know was such a, oh my God, Senator Harris, who you didn't get to know, he was a visionary with regards to Native American issues and restoring sacred sites to tribes. And so I'm going to be, my apologies, but I'll be leaving, but our wonderful Representative Randall will sit in my chair while I'm gone as your ranking member. So my apologies for leaving. I hope you understand.
Thank you very much, Ranking Member Ledger Fernandez. The chair at this time recognizes the gentleman from Alaska, Mr. Begich, for 5 minutes. Mr. Begich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions will be directed to Ms. Beretta. Thank you for your testimony and for your decades of work on this issue. How long have you been working on this issue for?
For 36 years.
36 years. And we are right here on the precipice of getting this issue addressed. Thank you for your long years of work, and thank you for raising this issue with me and my office early in my term here. For those watching today who may be new to the topic, what is the core problem that H.R. 3903 is designed to solve, and why do you need Congress to do it?
Thank you. The conflict that exists between the surface estate owners' conservation and the subsurface estate, which is the dominant estate, is that we can develop those lands. And the fact that the conservation concept is not true on the surface, it needs to be resolved. And so there should really be no question about that conflict, and how we resolve it, and the benefits are all within the testimony and the studies that have been done for years.
It's great to see that that our earlier witnesses on the previous panel were in agreement that this is something that needs to be done. This helps to streamline lands management and also provides new opportunities for Chugach in the region to actually utilize the land that they have and those resources that they have. Can you briefly explain how the split estate has affected land management and economic opportunity in the Chugach region over these last 3 decades?
Yes, the notion that the surface estate is held in conservation in the public perception is that those lands will remain pristine, but the fact that we have rights to extract minerals, to do resource development on those subsurface estates is it's challenging, because when the land was purchased, that was the intent, to basically stop us from being able to access our subsurface rights.
Okay. And so once we get this land exchange completed, what sort of benefits do you see to the communities that you represent, whether that be economic development, cultural stewardship and opportunities, or other long-term land management opportunities? What do you think is the outcome for Chugach once this is resolved?
Thank you. We have prioritized the land selection, the parcels culturally relevant that are adjacent to our Youth and Elders Spirit Camp that we hold every year. They are also economically viable and accessible from the road system, which there are only 2 roads in Alaska, so it's really important to be able to access those and to be able to develop those opportunities for our current generations and future generations to come.
That's fantastic, and I appreciate you, again, your many years of work on this issue. Thank you for making the long trip down from Alaska to our nation's capital to handle this personally. I appreciate you. You have an ally in me and many in the Congress. We want to see economic development and opportunities for the tribes and the regional corporations that represent them. And we're thrilled with your leadership and your boldness and your tenacity in sticking with it after so many Congresses have come and gone and this issue has remained unresolved. We're going to resolve it.
Thank you.
I yield back.
The gentleman yields. At this time, the chair recognizes the gentlewoman from the state of Washington, Ms. Randall, for 5 minutes. Ms. Randall.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Chairman Swanson for coming all the way from Tokeland to be with us here today. As folks know, the TERRA Act would authorize tribes to manage federal resources through a single comprehensive emergency response plan with the goal of strengthening tribal response to environmental threats and natural disasters impacting tribal communities. Chairman, you've spoken about the incompatibility between your HUD funding and DOT's timeline. What else would you say about the obstacles that tribes like yours face when they're trying to get help to prepare for or recover from extreme weather?
So in my opinion, I believe that a lot of these federal programs, they're more reactive instead of proactive. And for a tribe like Shoalwater, that's just right at sea level, it's a recipe for disaster. You can't, you have to plan ahead for a situation like that. And I believe that a lot of smaller tribes who are in these predicaments, they don't have the capacity to be able to cut through all this red tape. They don't have the resources. And so TERRA would be instrumental in helping us to be able to actually, save our villages.
Thank you so much, Chairman. And, at sea level, you are facing such extreme weather. How urgent is it that we act now to get tribes like yours the resources that they need to be prepared when disaster strikes?
For Shoalwater, there's only 2 ways into our reservation. And in 2007, we had a major storm that cut us off on both ends. We didn't have access to any resources at all. So we really need to protect State Route 105. And for our reservation, it's just a matter of time. The Army Corps of Engineers has built a seawall to protect our reservation. They've rebuilt it 3 different times since 2008. And we recognize that it's only a temporary fix. The permanent solution is moving uphill. And in order to do that, we need to expedite the process because the National Oceanic Administration estimates that by the year 2102, that Tokeland could be completely underwater.
Thank you so much for joining us today, for your leadership on the coast and across the country, and really appreciate you sharing your experience about this policy. I also appreciate the bipartisan support that we have seen for this bill and self-governance, Indian affairs, and sovereignty in this committee. I think it's clear that members of this committee, including the chairman, are very interested in cutting red tape so that tribes like yours can manage your own affairs in the way that best serves your members. So I appreciate all of your testimony today, and I'll yield back.
The gentleman yields back. At this time, the chair would recognize himself for 5 minutes. Chairman Swanson, quick question about the TERRA Act. Would you say is it fair to say that the NEPA review process, from your perspective and tribal leadership, has become too much of an encumbrance and hindrance for the tribe?
Chairman Hurd, I'm not prepared to answer that today, but I can follow up with a written statement.
Okay. Chairwoman Andrews Maltese, the 99-year lease issue, you mentioned that's essential for economic development and investments. Can you walk us through what kind of projects this legislation would allow?
Specifically, when we're talking about for our tribal members' ability to have a lease on tribal lands for housing. As I mentioned in my testimony, on Nope, as most people know, is Martha's Vineyard. It is a very, very expensive place to try to live. You cannot find land or any place to live. So therefore, the limited land resources that we have would provide an opportunity for them to be able to get a mortgage. 25 years or less on a mortgage is more expensive than getting a 30-year lease, which is customary in the industry. With regard to economic development, we've had people that have basically kicked the tires, but know that in fact there is no opportunity to have any sort of a lease that we can rely on in economic development that does not have to go through the bureaucracy of the secretarial approval is prohibitive. And when, through experiences with other tribes that have a little bit more latitude on their land, they know that there are better options in different areas than coming to us or our sister tribe because of the restrictions of the long lease terms.
Understood. Thank you very much for that. Councilman Morongo, quick question. Your testimony mentions the Arrowhead landmark. I've actually seen a picture of this. It's pretty impressive, located on one of the federal parcels that would be transferred to the nation. Does the general public currently have access to this landmark, and how would the nation handle that after the transfer?
Access to this landmark is quite limited. It's on a very steep mountainside. There aren't very many trails that even go remotely close to the Arrowhead. The U.S. Forest Service has a station where you can go to and view the Arrowhead, but there isn't much access to the Arrowhead itself.
Okay, but that access station would still be available after the transfer, correct?
It will be still available after the transfer.
Great. Chief Harris, question for you. Can you give us some background as why was the citizenship requirement originally included in the 1993 Settlement Act? Do you know? Maybe Chairwoman Andrews Maltese, could you loan your microphone to your colleague there? Thank you.
So yes, sir. Thank you for that question, Chairman Hurd. So when the 1993 settlement agreement came around, the federal government used this language as an administrative tool, if you will. Basically, we wanted, as you know, the government wants to know how much is this going to cost us. So how much is this settlement agreement going to cost the federal government? So they use this language, specifically these phrases, as an administrative tool to pay out per capita, basically. And now that the settlement agreement is decades old, it's been ratified and we've moved on, the payments, the per capita has been dispersed. So guess what stays? The language. It shouldn't be there. It's an abomination. And as you know, we have identified here today, it's just really antiquated language, and our Constitution does a better job at holding the tribe accountable for enrollment than this language would ever do.
As a lawyer, I can appreciate the complications that would come from the vague standard that you mentioned. I agree that's practically very difficult to work. Do you have an estimate of the number of individuals who would be eligible for enrollment if this legislation is enacted?
This bill will probably affect maybe 100 to 300 at the most. A very small drop in a bucket of normally we do not approve due to historical documentation or just plain out DNA. They don't match.
How many people, if any, have been denied enrollment in recent years due to these burdensome requirements or the standard? From the statistics from our enrollment office over the last 5 years, I would say roughly 300. Okay.
250.
Great. Thank you, Chief Harrison. Thank you to all our witnesses for being here today. Really appreciate your testimony and helping us advance good public policy in Indian country. At this time, my time has expired, and I would like to, the chair now recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Keating, for 5 minutes. Mr. Keating.
Well, Chairman Hurd, thank you so much for letting me be part of this hearing today. It's an honor to be a part of a committee that does so much on so many issues that affects my area, which is a very coastal area, including islands. So it's a very important committee to me, so thank you for the opportunity today. I just want to speak to, and not hold the committee's time any further, directly on H.R. 681, a bill that I put in, and it's pleased to see the chairwoman here today, Chairwoman Andrews Maltese, representing the tribe of Gayhead and Aquinnah. I just want to share with the committee members, too, the housing issue on Martha's Vineyard. The average price of a house on Martha's Vineyard is $1.5 million, the average. I sold my home there too early, but that's the average price right now. And I think this bill that had this, lease constraint of 25 years, that was 70 years ago. And the housing price on Martha's Vineyard, I can tell you firsthand, wasn't that costly back then. Times have changed. There have been many changes to the constraints that are on leased properties on tribal lands over the years. So I'd like to ask the chairman if you knew, for instance, I don't need exact numbers, but this is not that unusual. Aren't there other tribes that have been granted more than 25 years?
Yeah, there's actually, the act itself has been amended about 50 times to allow another 60 tribes to have access to the 99-year lease option. So that's why this is important, because it provides the stability that investors and partners need and the ability to basically forecast and truly predict how you're going to be able to use your land and develop them in the best way possible for the benefit of your tribal members, whether it's for housing, economic development, and other potential opportunities that are afforded somebody where they know that you have the land and you can actually do with what you need to do with that land as you determine it yourselves.
And it's quite intended and probable that the housing prices, if you're allowed to get more conventional mortgages, would be less for tribal members and allow them, this is an island.
Yes.
So allow them to stay close to home, which is not just has sovereign significance, but also family members, tradition, and all those things are so important. Thank you. And I also, if you could, just touch base on the idea that I just mentioned about sovereignty and keeping tribes and members together and how important this is.
It's a true exercise of our absolute sovereignty to be able to determine what's in the best interest of our people. And as you mentioned, as our tribal members are forced to leave the island, it's breaking up the community, it's breaking up the families. It's costing us more on the social services end because now we have to pay for daycare where the grandparents, aunts and uncles, or siblings aren't able to provide that care for the children. It also impacts when you think about not only on the island but also on Cape Cod. The island is very expensive, but Cape Cod, where our sisters and brothers and where Mashpee is, they too suffer from the very high cost of living and cost of real estate. And of course, it's not making any more on the island. And as we're finding, as the cost of the land, cost to build, cost per building square foot was somewhere leaning around $700 a square foot to build. And that's if you can find the land. And we always say that unless you're already pre-approved for at least $1 million, don't even think about trying to move back home. And if you're there, we're at least trying to figure out ways to divide up lands so that people are able to build something and get into more communal living as opposed to individual living spaces.
So they're important. I know firsthand. They're important childcare. They're important educational care and opportunities there. That you have community-based program to help the more senior members of the tribe.
Yes.
Community centers in that regard for their special needs. All there. And if you're going to have an economic development plan to have the buildings to house these kinds of functions, you really could save a lot of money.
And our economic development is there to help support the programs and services because we know the United States is making an effort, but we know that the funding for the support of our tribal programs is not sufficient. So tribes are needing to find economic development to supplement that or actually carry the programs and services that we provide for our community members.
Well, the time extended to me has run out. So I want to thank you for coming here. I want to thank, again, the chair and the committee for allowing me this time. And I yield back.
Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. I want to thank the witnesses for your valuable testimony and also my colleagues for their questions. Members of the committee may have some additional questions for you as our witnesses, and we would ask that you please respond to those in writing. Under Committee Rule 3, members of the committee must submit questions to the committee clerk by 5 p.m. on Tuesday, September 16th, 2025. The hearing record will be held open for 10 business days for these responses. If there is no further business, without objection, the committee stands adjourned. Thank you.